should be done that won't be done, and why are they important that they should be done? I hope my question is specific and clear.
Well, first of all, the first thing that should be done is to act in good faith. The second thing is legality and legitimacy. If you miss out on those first two, whatever you're doing, you're wasting time. I learned something from Jeno Yoweri. One day he was addressing mourners at Kololo. And that was after the death of Jeno Eri Tumwine. He said something in Runyankole. He said, Abantunga moni bagamba, wagambira busa. And every person who knows Runyankole, now that it is mandatory to learn Runyankole, at least outside the basement, before you go, you learn it from the basement. When you do something that is outrightly illegal,
the young people would say to that comment,
you know, the moment you do something that is outrightly illegal, you are gambira busa. So, General 7 on this, you are gambira busa. That's number one. In other words, the young people would say, Toina Chotugamba.
Yeah.
Are you in the first place allowed under the Constitution or not? I answer that in the negative, because the Constitution commands us in Article 92, you have no power as Parliament to make a law that has the effect of overturning a decision of court.
Abagamba. There's no power tebalina buyinza nga Parliament okukyusa ekiragiro kya kooti. Bennyini mujukira ebintu bya Mpuuga ne bayomba. Bwe twali ku bintu bya Mpuuga nti yabba ebitaano. Yagenda ne yeewaabira mu kooti. Kooti n'esala nti ebintu bye bikoma awo kale yabba naye teyabba nnyo. Bwe yajja mu Parliament yaleeta ensalawo ya kooti. Bassekikubo nga bakuŋŋaanyizza emikono gy'abaka ba Parliament. Ensonga eddemu eyogerweko. Beebuuze ssente ezo Mpuuga yazifuna atya ne banne. Mu budget zajjamu zitya, yazifuna ngaani? Okitegedde, zaali za bukozi bwaki? Omanyi Parliament ne NRM ne Speaker kyeyayimirirako nti kooti yasazeewo tetuyinza kuddamu kuteesa ku nsalawo ya kooti ne tukyusa kooti be yasazeewo, n'olwekyo byo tebiina makulu bye mugamba. Okitegedde, tugenda kuba tuli in contempt of court, tugenda kuba tuli mu kutyoboola ensala ya kooti ekitakkirizibwa mu mateeka gaki ga Uganda. Olwaleero bayisizza etteeka eriteekawo kooti y'amagye okuvunaana bantu ba bulijjo gwe nange ba civilian abatawebwangu contract tinno basavinga mu magye, abatasasulwa UPDF nga bakola byabwe birala nnyo. Naye olw'okuba oyambadde engoye ezibatiisatiisa bo zibalaba nno zibakanga zibalwaza ekidumusi bakutwala mu kooti y'amagye. Okitegedde, kooti ya ensukkulumu bye yagaana, kitegeeza ba overturninze ensalawo ya kooti ne bagikolera etteeka eddala ate era nga liri mu bumenyi bw'amateeka. Baliyo bajaguza balya nnyama bookya emicomo. Okitegedde, banywamu batamiira olw'ekyakoleddwa. Ne Museveni Mwamwende bwe yabadde bayadde Kiboga, yabadde somewhere n'agamba ne bazannya bakikoze badde bagenda balenzi bagenda tukinagukako nebaza bakoze kirungi nnyo so nga ba overturning ensalawo ya kooti ekikwatana ne ssemateeka. Kitegeeza General 7 UPDF mutabani we n'abaka Parliament abayisizza ekibiiru kino bamenyi b'amateeka basaana kuba mabega wa mitayimbwa. Wulira Ssegona.
Between the parties. This is a decision that was rendered against the Attorney General of the Republic of Uganda. And it says, among other things, 1, you can try civilians, but only in very special circumstances. And those must be proved to court. And the Chief Justice went ahead to elaborate or to hint on what would probably amount to special circumstances. They can only arise in situations where there are no Ugandan civil courts that are effective.
So,
Yeah,
That's number one.
so there was no need to create a circumstance to try civilians
Absolutely
in military courts, because that was already possible.
Absolutely. No.
Because if the Supreme Court says you can try civilians only in special circumstances,
In the special circumstances,
exceptional circumstances, yes.
The exceptional circumstance is only when there are no functional civil courts in Uganda.
Yeah.
Now, this can arise, for example, because they are talking about persons subject to military law. If you, Samson Kasumba, you know how journalists want to tag along. You want to go and cover a story in Somalia. Voluntarily, you submit. You go there and commit what is called a service offense. You can be charged there. Because in Somalia, there are no functional civil courts of Uganda.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away the fact that the Somali government can charge you in accordance with that law.
Okay.
But you may not have offended them. You might have offended the UPDF there. Now, those are the only special circumstances. And only when they cannot carry you back to bring you and charge you from here. That would necessitate another amendment, for example, to confer extra-territorial jurisdiction on Ugandan courts. But we're not only talking about civilians. We're also talking about our sons.
And now that you give that example, Kasumba, like I want to cover a military operation, I am embedded to go and cover.
Yes.
God forbid. And while inside that embedment, the unit in which I am, in Guatemala, goes on a rampage and rapes women. And I did not, but the unit did, a few did. Will I also be tried with them?
No. You see, criminal law is personal.
Yeah.
It is not group.
Yeah.
However, you could have aided and abetted, because that was also covered in the Supreme Court judgment.
Yeah.
You could have aided and abetted. If you aid and abet the criminality of a person subject to military law, you also become subject to military law. But that said, military law is law.
Okay.
It can still be enforced in civil courts in Uganda. It has always been done. Now, the Supreme Court went ahead to explain that the UPDF court, which is the court martial, can handle disciplinary cases.
Yeah.
That's what they call service offenses. For example, if I come here, in the process of my deliberations, I offend the code of Next Radio. I do not become subject to your law. The only thing you can do is to switch off this microphone and ask me to move out. If I insist, I cross into the realm of trespass. I become a criminal trespasser. But you cannot take me before your HR.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Now, if the law says you cannot make a legislation, because remember, under Article 79, we make laws for the good, subject to the Constitution. Under the laws, we make laws for the good governance, justice and order in Uganda. So number one, subject to the Constitution. If there is a prohibition in the Constitution, then you do not dare. What did they do, or what did we do as Parliament that is prohibited?
So, for the listener, once the highest court in the land rules on a matter, you cannot go anywhere to cure a position that has been ruled.
First, how do you cure it when it is not sick?
Yeah.
You see, we accepted to be governed under a constitutional framework.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we shared out roles. Ssegona in Parliament, make laws, subject to the Constitution. Executive, propose laws and implement laws. Judiciary, interpret, do adjudication.
Okay.
The highest court in the land has made a decision, and I believe it was not a mistake. By the way, it doesn't have to be high court. I mean, the highest court could even be a magistrate's court. You are not allowed to make a law that overturns it. What you do in that case, you appeal to the next until you exhaust.
I'll tell you that I was convicted of a crime by a magistrate's court over a matter on which the High Court had ruled maintain status quo. So this is the Uganda in which we are.
Yeah. So the point is here. Then you appeal or you seek revision.
Okay.
You go to the High Court and seek revision over in your case. Now the Supreme Court has made a ruling and it confirms three previous constitutional decisions. I did participate in the case of Uganda Law Society versus Attorney General following the siege of the High Court by the Black Mamba. Now who are very, very notorious and looming everywhere. The court hinted, although we had not directly attacked the constitutionality of the court martial, the court did hint on it. And I had suggested that we attack it head on. Now, my senior colleagues said, no, that will look political. We do not want to get involved in politics. But the justices of the Constitutional Court hinted on it. The Attorney General appealed because still we won. But that was not directly an issue. In the Lord Mayor Lukwago areas and Attorney General cases here and so on and so forth, actually Lukwago and Electoral Commission,
yes,
we filed the same. We got an injunction to restrain the Electoral Commission from denominating him, deregistering him from the nomination for Lord Mayorship. We did not pursue it that time because that's the time we had a crisis at the Constitutional Court. It was not sitting. In the Kabaziguruka matter, we repeated it. We won in the Constitutional Court. We went to the Supreme Court. Attorney General sought a stay of execution and continued persecuting people in the court martial. We painfully accepted because it was a decision of court. Now, when the Supreme Court, in another case of Ammon, it was also handled the same way. They did not appeal because they were comfortable with their stay of execution.
Okay.
So Supreme Court now decides.
After a while.
Oh yes, after a while, because we filed the Kabazuguka case in 2016.
Oh.
Up until 2025.
Those are almost 10 years.
Is when we got a judgment. Of course, there were issues. We lost some judges, others retired, and so on and so forth. Of course, one can argue, why did they wait to retire before handing down the decision? But finally, the decision is here. The options are available to the state. Because it was not without solution. The Chief Justice, in his lead judgment, with the concurrence of the rest, gave options. One of which, to me, which should have been considered, is to say, let's get a division in the High Court. That division handles matters military. Because in the High Court we have a division that handles...
There's a land division.
There's a land division, civil division, criminal division, ICD.
International crimes division.
Yes, ICD, and so on and so forth. Get this one. Train and orient judges. And they handle military issues. You could even advertise for judges and the men in the military who supply those with qualifications because they are there. We offer them some training. I mean, a man like Major Witch, he has practiced long enough, although I think he would be about to retire because the retirement at High Court is 65. But there are others who are even still younger. Now, when they apply, you strategically place them in that division. Besides, do we have a crisis?
No.
We have a security crisis.
What are the offenses? No, there is no security.
The security crisis we have, or the crisis we have, is General 7 is in fear his son might not get in power when there is no court martial. So ayagala atekewo ekintu ekinaatiisatiisa kikanga baana kikrown ekirawo kikanga buli omu okitegedde kitiisatiisa abandiremeseza omutabani kitiisatiisa abandiremeseza taata okitegedde kiteeke buli omu mu fear ng'obeera mu fear n'abo badde n'embavu just nga bali ku byabwe ku mulamu omutuufu nga boogera mazima babateekeyo eyo mu bamaleyo emyaka 5 bamaleyo emyaka 10 nga tebawozesebwa nga tewalina bujulizi okitegedde sobole okuteeka mu balala okutya abandi badde balowooza nno Gen. Museveni aveeko ne mutabani we aveeko babire nga bali mu kutya nga bali mu butiitiizo bw'ekika ekyagulo nga bali mu kukankana nga tamanyi kikiddako okitegedde yasobola okwongezaayo olutambi lwe ayongezeeyo olugendo lwe nga mumutambulira mu fiya kino bakiteekawo just tukanga baana naye tewali kyetaago tekyetaagisa nebbo eno mbanayogaa tekyetaagisa naye mu bbo kyetaagisa okuteeka fiya mu bantu bo okwongezaayo olutambula lwabwe.
We have not stopped the UPDF from offering security or carrying out their mandate under Article 209. Indeed, the Supreme Court touched that and said no, they are exceeding their boundary because their functions under 209 do not include adjudication. The Supreme Court handled each and everything you're talking about. So, why am I saying there's no crisis? What are the offenses? You're talking about treason. You're talking about terrorism. You're talking about murder. You're talking about aggravated robbery. Those are offenses under the realm of the civil courts. And the Supreme Court again ruled.
But the Commander-in-Chief, and this is his profession, argues that why they have been able to have a lot of success is, for instance, somebody commits a crime in Karamoja. It is important that that matter is dealt with in order to avert an uprising, so that the people know the soldier repped the court seats. I think those are called field courts. The field court seats, field court martial seats, and the matter is ruled over, and the punishment is given, and there is cheering, and everybody says these people are very serious. So it becomes easy for the operation to go on. What would be your take on that, as opposed to getting such a matter get on the on the case backlog profile and as you know, and then the people in Karamoja or wherever it is.
Do you want to say there is no backlog in military cases? Do you know a gentleman called General Kale Kaihura?
I do.
When was he charged in the court martial? Has his case been concluded?
They are never.
A gentleman called General David Munungu Tinyefunza?
I do.
When was he charged? Is his case concluded?
Are they ever concluded?
That's the point. So if you're talking about backlog, it's in civil courts, it's military courts.
But do you understand his point on the field court martial?
Yes. Actually, he says they have registered success. What he means by success is that actually they have reduced the population in Karamoja, either by killing or by locking up as many as they can, hold in their prisons. I think they were talking about statistics of 26,000 Karamojong youth that have been removed from the field by way of locking them up. So, and you say, we have therefore succeeded in curbing crime. But what would stop you? You see, I did ask you a question at the beginning. Do we want to be governed by a constitution or not? We took a decision, which I believe was conscious, deliberate, intentional, and sensible. So we must not lose sensibility and sensitivity by descending into crime to prevent crime.
Yeah.
The Constitution sets limits who does what. Get those Karamojong you're talking about, take them to courts. Does Genome 7 want to tell me there are no functional civil courts in Karamoja? They are there. They are functioning in accordance with the law. If you fail to bring evidence, Kasumba, don't charge, release. Now, Genome 7 has first of all decided that that funding the judiciary, funding the police are not a priority. That's why if you go and report a matter to police, someone has beaten me in a Chifumbira, they'll tell you, do you have fuel? We go and arrest. Why? Because Genome 7 is not doing his work.
Big Talk will take a very, very brief break. But one of the things that I can tell you that I do know is that he who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
Wow. Obiwulidde awo wetuli General Museveni yeerwanako nnyo buli olukya okulaba nsigadde ntya nga ndi mu ntebe. Famire yange nsigadde ntya nga ekyali ebikya ppere. Jjukira waali yabbawo bubbi. Ne byalina byonna babibbye bubbi. Okitegedde tebalina kyabwe kya nnamaddala nti bakoze mu ntuuyo zaabwe ne bakifuna. Okitegedde kati balina fear nene nnyo okubiluuzinga ate nga whether they do what or what they will lose them because they are not theirs. Toyinza kubanga oli mu kintu ky'oli nga wabba kibbe ng'okina bumenyi bw'amateeka n'okakata nnyo n'ogamba kino kyange. Era essaawa yonna ajja kukiruuzinga, essaawa yonna kijja kugendako, essaawa yonna kijja kuddira nannyini kyo ne bw'onookola n'egina emyaka emeka kijja kuddayo era ojja kusigala ng'oli sseke nga balimi okukola ebyabwe ebya ddala eby'omu mazima era bongera kukola bitali bya ddala. Kitegeeza tebalina kye balina. Okitegedde kitegeeza one day ensi egenda kukyuka kati bapreventinga nsi kukyuka kibagezaawo kuziyiza nene banaaziyiza